In the turquoise waters of the Caribbean, a new crisis is brewing. As of October 2025, American A-10 Thunderbolt II's, Warthogs, now patrol skies near Venezuela, signaling a dramatic escalation in US-Venezuela tensions. This is no training exercise. It's a calculated show of force that's rattled Latin America and the world. The Caribbean, vital for global trade and home to many nations, is suddenly the center of a geopolitical standoff. The deployment of these iconic warplanes shifts the region from uneasy diplomacy to the brink of confrontation. The world watches, wondering not if, but when, this standoff will ignite. To understand how we reached this moment, we must look back at the long history of mistrust between Washington and Caracas. This standoff is the result of decades of deteriorating US-Venezuela relations, a story marked by shifting alliances, economic interests, and clashing ideologies. The two countries once maintained a pragmatic partnership, especially during the Cold War, when Venezuela's oil was a key resource for the US. But beneath the surface, mutual distrust simmered, fueled by political differences and competing visions for the region. Tensions spiked dramatically, with Hugo Chávez's rise to power in the late 1990s. Chávez's socialist revolution, his fiery anti-US rhetoric, and his close alliances with leaders like Fidel Castro put him on a collision course with Washington. His government's nationalization of key industries, especially oil, and his efforts to build a regional bloc independent of US influence, set the stage for ongoing hostility that would only deepen over time. The US responded forcefully, imposing waves of economic sanctions, isolating Venezuela diplomatically, and openly supporting opposition groups. American officials accused the Venezuelan government of widespread corruption, election rigging, and severe human rights abuses. These actions were intended to pressure Caracas into political reforms, but instead, they hardened the Venezuelan government's resolve and deepened the rift. Caracas, in turn, has long viewed these moves as imperialist attempts to undermine its sovereignty and seize control of its vast oil reserves. The government has used this narrative to rally domestic support and portray itself as a victim of foreign aggression, further fueling anti-American sentiment among its population. The Caribbean's strategic importance as a trade and energy corridor only heightens the stakes, making the region a flashpoint for global powers. Control over these waters means influence over vital shipping lanes and energy supplies, adding another layer of complexity to the conflict. In late 2024, Nicolas Maduro declared a state of emergency in response to a growing US naval presence off Venezuela's coast. The government began mobilizing troops and ramping up military exercises, signaling a willingness to escalate the conflict and framing the standoff as a fight for national survival. Every move by either side is now viewed through a lens of deep suspicion, with both governments convinced the other is acting in bad faith. Years of failed negotiations and broken promises have eroded any hope for meaningful dialogue or compromise. The recent deployment of A-10 attack aircraft is just the latest and perhaps most dangerous step in this long, bitter rivalry. As military posturing intensifies, the risk of miscalculation grows, threatening to push the US and Venezuela closer to open conflict than ever before. In early autumn 2025, the US Air Force made a bold move, deploying dozens of A-10 Warthogs to newly reinforced bases across the Caribbean. The sight of these iconic attack aircraft, known for their durability and firepower, signaled a significant escalation in the region. Their arrival was not just a show of strength, but a clear message that the US was prepared to act decisively. With these aircraft now stationed within easy striking distance of Venezuela, the strategic balance in the Caribbean shifted overnight. The proximity of US forces to Venezuelan territory raised tensions and put regional actors on high alert. This deployment came on the heels of a series of US airstrikes targeting what officials described as Venezuelan narco-trafficking networks. The strikes, carried out with precision munitions, aimed to disrupt the flow of illicit drugs and weaken criminal organizations operating in remote border regions. These actions marked a dramatic shift in US policy, from a posture of containment to one of active interdiction. Military briefings highlighted new strategies and a willingness to take the fight directly to the source. In Washington, Officials frame the deployment as a necessary crackdown on transnational criminal networks that, they argued, posed a direct threat to U.S. national security and regional stability. The Pentagon emphasized that all operations were being conducted with strict adherence to international law, stressing the precision and legality of each mission. Legal advisors were on hand to brief commanders and reassure allies. But in Caracas, the Venezuelan government denounced the U.S. actions as blatant imperialist aggression. Officials warned that these moves were a dangerous prelude to a possible invasion, fueling anti-American sentiment in the streets. President Maduro responded by placing his military on the highest alert, mobilizing troops and armored vehicles in the capital. He called on allies and the international community to condemn what he described as a violation of Venezuelan sovereignty. Across the Caribbean, governments were split. Some quietly supported the U.S. campaign, hoping for increased security cooperation, while others voiced deep concerns about the risk of regional destabilization. At a tense CARICOM summit, leaders urged restraint and called for urgent dialogue. Yet, for the smaller island nations, their voices were often drowned out by the superpowers. Despite their calls for peace, they struggled to influence the unfolding crisis. Ordinary people across the region watched anxiously as events unfolded, glued to news broadcasts and social media, aware that their future could be shaped by decisions made far away. The fate of the Caribbean now seemed to hang in the balance, its destiny tied to the ambitions and rivalries of distant capitals. As the standoff deepened, the region braced for what might come next. The balance of power in the Caribbean has never felt more precarious. The A-10's deployment reveals a shift in modern warfare. Once famed for tank busting, the Warthog is now a drone hunter, equipped with the Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, APKWS. This system turns cheap rockets into laser-guided munitions, ideal for shooting down drones and cruise missiles. The cost advantage is clear. APKWS rockets are a fraction of the price of traditional air-to-air missiles, making them perfect for countering drone swarms. The A-10's endurance and payload make it a persistent aerial defender, especially when networked with other assets for targeting. Its presence is a warning to Caracas. Any drone threat will be met swiftly and affordably. The Warthog, once considered obsolete, is now a symbol of adaptable, cost-effective power. In the Caribbean, it's not just muscle, it's smart strategy. The irony is striking. The A-10 is essential in the Caribbean, yet the U.S. Air Force is pushing to retire the fleet by 2026. The official reason funds and personnel are needed for newer jets like the F-35. Congress and some military leaders argue the A-10's unique capabilities are irreplaceable, especially for supporting ground troops and countering drones. The incoming Trump administration, skeptical of the F-35, may pause or reverse the retirement. For now, the A-10s fly critical missions in the Caribbean, even as their future hangs in the balance. The contradiction is clear: indispensable in crisis, expendable in budget plans. The Warthog's fate is as uncertain as the region it now patrols. Experts like Dan Grazier of the Stimson Center argue the A-10's battlefield impact is unmatched, even decades after its introduction. Designed during the Cold War to counter massive armored assaults, the A-10 has proven its worth in countless conflicts, earning a reputation as a reliable and resilient workhorse. Grazier and other analysts point out that few aircraft can match its unique combination of survivability, firepower, and close air support capabilities. Its low, slow approach and fearsome cannon inspire confidence in allies and dread in adversaries. The A-10's ability to loiter over the battlefield, absorb damage and deliver precise strikes makes it a favorite among ground troops. For many soldiers, the distinctive sound of the Warthog's engines and its iconic BRRT cannon are a welcome sign of support in the heat of combat. The current deployment signals U.S. resolve and tests the A-10's new counter-drone role in real-world conditions. As threats evolve, the Air Force is adapting the Warthog's mission profile, integrating advanced sensors and tactics to address emerging dangers like drones and electronic warfare. This evolution demonstrates the aircraft's continued relevance on the modern battlefield. This sends a message to Venezuela and other rivals about American adaptability. The presence of the A-10 in the region is a clear signal that the U.S. is prepared to respond to new challenges, using both proven platforms and innovative tactics to maintain stability and deter aggression. But the risks are real. Such a potent presence could provoke a dangerous response from Caracas. Heightened tensions may lead to miscalculations or unintended confrontations, especially as both sides increase their military readiness and rhetoric. The A-10 is formidable, but vulnerable to advanced air defenses. Modern surface-to-air missile systems and radar-guided weapons pose significant threats, forcing pilots and commanders to carefully weigh the risks of each mission. Analysts warn that escalation could spiral out of control if not managed with diplomatic caution. The balance between demonstrating strength and avoiding unnecessary conflict is delicate, requiring constant communication and strategic foresight. The Warthog is the right tool for this mission, but only if paired with a clear strategy to avoid miscalculation. Success depends not just on military hardware, but on careful planning, coordination, and a deep understanding of the region's complex dynamics. In the Caribbean, military might must be balanced with restraint. The enduring legacy of the A-10 is not just its firepower, but its role as a symbol of American commitment, one that must be wielded wisely in a rapidly changing world. The A-10 deployment is reshaping the region's political and economic landscape. For the US, it's a show of strength, but risks entanglement in another costly conflict. Venezuela faces immediate economic pain, higher shipping costs, capital flight, and even deeper isolation. The crisis could either force change or help Maduro rally support against an external enemy. Caribbean nations reliant on tourism fear instability will drive away visitors and revenue. Politically, they're pressured to pick sides, straining regional unity. Globally, the threat to Venezuela's oil reserves creates volatility in energy markets, affecting prices worldwide. The A-10s are more than warplanes. They're a catalyst for economic and political upheaval. The region's future is now tied to the outcome of this standoff. Beneath the headlines, ordinary people bear the brunt of this crisis. Venezuelans, already suffering shortages and instability, now face the added fear of war. US military families worry for loved ones deployed to a volatile region. Caribbean citizens see their peaceful lives disrupted by military overflights and restricted waters. The sense of powerlessness is palpable. Caught between superpowers, their hopes for peace are fading. Every step toward militarization diverts resources from education and healthcare, deepening hardship. The true cost is the erosion of hope and the threat to basic human security. The region's people want peace, not conflict imposed from afar. The A-10s circling Venezuela are more than a military move. They're a crossroads for the region. The US is betting on force to pressure Maduro, while Venezuela frames the crisis as a fight for sovereignty. Caribbean nations are caught in the middle, their stability at risk. The world is watching. Will leaders choose escalation or dialogue? A peaceful solution demands bold leadership and renewed diplomacy, not just military might. True security comes from cooperation and respect, not just warplanes. This crisis is a wake-up call to invest in peace before conflict becomes inevitable. The future of the Caribbean, and its people, depends on the choices made now.